It's crazy to me that the best-selling phone series has hit a point where it's in a bit of limbo. The iPhone 16 Pro and Pro Max are some of the least Apple-like products in a little while, and with competition from Google statistically fierce right now, and the compromises and changes the EU is pushing towards Apple, it makes you wonder what the iPhone's next move is. So let's talk about that. Hey guys, I'm Ryan Thomas and I've had the iPhone 16 Pro Max since it came out as my work phone. That means I've spent a lot of time with it and I've had time to develop more of an opinion on it. I've also since tried the new Pixel series, compared it with the Galaxy Ultra, and more recently been able to actually hold it side by side with the likes of the OnePlus 12, the Oppo Find X8 Pro, and even the more niche Vivo X100 Ultra. I truly believe that the iPhone 16 Pro series, and I really do mean the Pro series in particular, not the 16 as a whole, was a bit of a fumble by Apple. Don't get me wrong, this phone is still one of the best that you can buy, at least here in the West. TLDR, this is still a phenomenal phone with a lot to offer, which I will get into. But there are a few head-scratching things that make you wonder what was going through the maker's minds here. Like, I've spoken before about camera control, the thing on the side. It's a pretty pointless and gimmicky feature, but it's also genuinely flawed. Like, the accuracy is horrific. It's one of those features you might expect to see on, say, a cheap Chinese phone that's been imported, where the functionality really hasn't been polished yet. I mean, Apple nailed the one-thumb zoom wheel that other phones have incorporated and taken inspiration from ever since. So why change it? That seems to be like the optimum way to zoom with the camera. My theory is that it was a panic decision to give the 16 Pro and Pro Max a bit more of a unique selling point over the last generation phones, because aside from this, they are incredibly similar. This next part I'm sure you've all heard before, so I'm not going to bore you with it, but Apple Intelligence also felt like a bit of a panic reaction. Yeah guys, this phone has AI. Honest, it'll be with you in a few months. Promise. A few months? That's enough time for Oppo, Honor, Xiaomi, OnePlus and Samsung to all release new phones before this gets all of those software updates and AI features that were in its launch campaign. Not necessarily a huge problem, although I don't like it. It's just a very un-Apple-like thing to do. Thankfully, the 16 Pro Max has received some of its AI promises in beta drops. We now have the better Siri, though I'm not sure it's a particularly amazing experience. There are new writing tools like summaries that resemble what other smartphone makers have been putting into their phones, and this AI can now rewrite text, which sounds like something I really could have done with when I was in school doing homework. You can now search for photos in your library by describing what you're looking for, similar to what we have in Google Photos, and the object removal feature called Cleanup is finally here too. This is something I know a fair few iPhone users actually really liked about what we had on Android, and now it's come to the iPhone. It's pretty decent, but like its competition, it isn't 100% perfect. There are more Apple Intelligence features to come down the road, TM. So even almost 3 months into this product's lifespan, I still can't 100% review it, which is just insane. But it still feeds into the iPhone feeling unpolished, like a rushed or panicked release. And that's wild for Apple. The iPhone 16 Pro Max's cameras are definitely the best Apple have put into a phone, but I wouldn't say are really near the best that you'd find in any phone. Like, they're way more capable than people need, and to be honest, I don't see a world where Apple does stuff a 1-inch sensor into its phone, at least for a very, very long time. The more time I've spent with it, the more I've appreciated the photographic styles, because it allows you to add some character back to smartphone photos that you just don't get with a lot of smartphones these days. You know, when phone companies decided that photographs could be measured objectively. Just not really the same thing. I've also somewhat used the Halliday camera app here to capture more film-like photos using the Process Zero mode, which has been fun to play about with, but nothing more really, and generally I just stick to the standard camera app. Although I do use the Blackmagic one when I'm shooting pro video. It's funny, this can actually be a whole video into itself. The iPhone 16 Pro's best feature is the one that no one uses. That's the ProRes log recording mode. I've since tried other log recording modes from Xiaomi and Vivo, and they're good, but I always come back to this one because of the ProRes codec in particular. It's just so good. I love the way that it handles colors, contrast. That lack of dynamic tone mapping makes the footage look like it's shot on an actual camera and not a smartphone that's trying to play around with HDR all the time. It just looks great, and I've been using the newer case, which gives me an adapter so I can use my full-size ND filters on my smartphone and also get that 180-degree shutter angle so that motion looks relatively natural. But again, no one uses this feature, so it's a bit of a shame. They always used to say that you could start your filmmaking career with a phone, but in truth, that was always a bit of a stretch. But you can genuinely do that now with what Apple and others are offering with their log recording modes, but in particular, that ProRes footage just looks exceptional. By the way, for anyone interested, I use buttery LUTs for my footage to correct it to Rec. 709 and also to do a bit of tweaking. I know I've had it for a while, but the size of the screen and how thin the bezels are always take me by surprise. I mean, it really does look like a window into another reality, and that's something I just don't feel with many other phones. But I also think that at this screen size, flat sides feel like absolute dog egg. Like when we moved from the iPhone 5S to the 6 Plus, there was a clear reason why we moved to curved sides on the Apple devices, because that is just not ergonomic. Flat sides at this size, not ergonomic. I recently got to try out the Oppo Find X8 Pro, and it has a flat display and a relatively flat back, but it has tapered sides with no curves to the screen. And that's exactly how they're meant to be done. That gives you more ergonomics, but also gives you that very usable flat display. Not to say that this display is bad, it's phenomenal, but I just don't love the flat sides at 6.9 inches. iOS still has its issues with regards to information density. The fact that this screen is huge, and yet the information is no denser really than what you'll find on the much smaller standard Pro is just, well, that doesn't really make any sense. And sure, you can now put apps where you want, but I mean, come on, that's not really something to celebrate, is it? I do like AirDrop, but other than that, I always come back to iOS wishing that I was using Android. Actually, I think in a lot of ways, I just wish I was using an Android phone. And that's not what the iPhone is meant to be. It's meant to be the pinnacle, and you know what? It's just not that anymore. So what's next for the iPhone then? Well, if I had to guess, I think AI is going to be a big factor. Not sure you really need to be a genius to work that one out, so I will take no credit for that. I also think this camera control thing is going to be canned sooner rather than later, and I'm not sure we'll see significant leaps in usability for a long time now. We've kind of hit peak smartphone, or maybe peak iPhone, and other than the AI stuff, I think there'll be a major plateau. The 16 Pro Max has great cameras, a superb display, amazing performance, very good battery life, a solid build, and is overall an exceptional phone. But it doesn't feel like it deserves to live in that ultra tier of smartphones anymore, at least in my opinion. The iPhone feels like it's in limbo, not sure where it should really go or what's next. But what I do know right now is that for the first time ever, every time I pick it up, I wish I was using a Pixel, a Galaxy, or a OnePlus. Let me know your thoughts in the comments on the 16 Pro series, guys. Do you share my thoughts on the iPhone sort of losing its way a bit? Or do you think the inverse actually, that it's never been better? Because objectively, I guess this is probably the best iPhone. The competition is catching up, and quickly too. What do you make of the camera control, the AI situation, and the strangely good ray tracing performance? Let me know in the comments. I'd love to hear the voice of a level-headed Android community on this topic, because just spouting Apple is bad, Google is good is just, well, it's not helping anyone, is it? While you're down there, be sure to hit like if you enjoyed today's video and subscribe to never miss another upload. I've been Ryan Thomas, and I will catch you later. Cheers.